Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about a very complex topic but very important in order to get results. This is the place where you can get most of your results. And it's not about nutrition, it's not about fitness, it's about the way you perceive yourself. The idea is why so many people feel like they're doing everything right, yet they're still not getting the results. As a coach, one of the phrases I hear most often from my clients it is, I don't understand. I feel like I'm doing everything right. And honestly, in many cases, they are telling the truth. They are eating better than they used to. They drink fewer sodas. They cook more often. They pay more attention to their nutrition. They already corrected some of the obvious mistakes, yet the results still aren't showing up. At this point, many people start looking for something to blame: chocolate, bread, wine, desserts. And of course, when consumed excessively, none of these foods are particularly helpful for health or for fat loss goals. But after years of coaching, I noticed that the problem often goes far beyond any single food. The real problem is usually everything we no longer notice. All those small habits that have become so normal that they completely disappear from our awareness. The cookie that automatically comes with coffee. The glass of wine that always accompanies dinner. The Thursday morning croissant. The dessert that feels mandatory. The Friday evening drinks. Individually, none of these habits seems particularly harmful, but when they accumulate over years, they create a parallel system that quietly works against our goals. A system we built ourselves, often without even realizing it. Another common mistake is to confuse improvement and mastery. For example, someone who has eating very little protein may double their daily intake and feel like they have completely solved the problem. But if they are still very far below their actual needs, the issue hasn't been solved. It's simply less problematic than it was before. Doing better does not necessarily mean doing enough. That small distinctions really matter. Because when we judge our habits based only on how we feel, we often overestimate our progress. The body doesn't operate on impressions. It does works with repeated behaviors. We also tend to believe we eat accordingly to what we want. In reality, we often eat accordingly to our routines. And more importantly, we are not supposed to eat either for the way we want to eat, either for our habits. We are supposed to eat accordingly to our needs. This gap between our actual needs and our automatic behavior is exactly why so many people feel like they are doing everything right while remaining stuck for months or even years. If you really want to change your diet before to act on anything else, you need to start making the invisible visible. Why does your brain love habits? That's a question. The human brain is an incredible adaptation machine. Contrary to what many people think, it isn't constantly searching for novelty. Contrary to what many people think, it isn't constantly searching for novelty. A large part of its job is actually to conserve energy. That's why we naturally develop habits. We take the same route to work. We park in the same parking slot. We love to sit in the same seat during meetings. And in the gym, it is not unusual to see someone walk across the entire room in order to perform the second exercise. By example, you have to do pull-ups and just after push-ups. You could do, to be efficient, the push-up just close to the bar. But most people will go to their designated space for push-ups, the one that they use to have their mat or so. From the outside, you might think that this behavior is strange, but it is actually completely normal. A part of the brain often associated with automatic and emotional process is constantly trying to bring us back to what feels familiar. Every habit reduces the number of decisions we have to make, and the fewer decisions the brain has to make, the less energy it spends. in many areas of life. That is extremely useful. The problem begins when those same automatic patterns gradually take control of our eating behaviors. Because a food habit does more than repeat a behavior. It creates a framework, and that framework influences our choices far more than most people realize. The next question would be why habits never satisfy us for long? Because maybe you already have saw that. Whenever a behavior is new, the brain pays special attention to it. A new restaurant, an exceptional dessert, a barbecue with friends, a bottle of wine open to celebrate a special occasion. Because the event is unusual, the brain experiences it as a reward. But the brain adapts quickly. What was once special gradually becomes normal. This phenomenon is known as habituation. The more often a behavior is repeated, the less attention it receives and the less satisfaction it provides. So consuming more is less satisfaction. The pleasure hasn't disappeared. It has simply become familiar. And this is often where a new behavior gets added on top of the old one. It's like layers of an onion. The barbecue becomes barbecue plus wine, then barbecue plus wine plus dessert, then barbecue plus wine plus dessert plus appetizers. As you never feel anymore the rewarding aspect of what you already have, then you search for more stimulation, it piles up. The brain isn't necessarily looking for more food, it's often trying to recreate the level of satisfaction it felt when the experience was still new. This is how layers of eating habits are built. One habit creates a framework, then a second habit gets added to it, then a third, then a fourth, and after a few years, we end up with a collection of behaviors that seems perfectly normal. That is precisely what makes habits so powerful. They develop slowly, they become invisible, and once they become invisible, we stop questioning them. This is really the important part of that video. The real danger when habits become invisible. The problem with habits isn't simply that they repeat themselves. The real problem is that they become invisible. We easily notice exceptional rewards. A large restaurant meal, a birthday celebration, a festive evening, a vacation weekend. These events attract our attention because they stand out. What we notice far less are the everyday behaviors. The sugar added to coffee, the cookie grabbed automatically at work or with the same coffee, the morning croissant, the glass of wine that has become automatic, the junk food such as donuts that the colleagues are bringing to share with you, the snack in front of television, the popcorn that always accompany family movies night. Yet, these repeated behaviors, week after week, often have the greatest impact. It is something I observe regularly in coaching. When people describe their diet to me, they are often genuinely convinced that they are eating well. And when they summarize their week in a few sentences, it sounds fairly reasonable. But as we begin digging deeper, we start to see problems. Oh, right there were a few drinks on Friday. Oh yes, we went out on Saturday. We had a brunch with the family on Sunday. Wednesday was a co-worker's birthday, so this is exceptional. Friday night we watched a movie with the kids, and little by little something became clear. Not a single major event, nothing crazy, but an accumulation. Some people continue minimizing these habits even when we talk about it. Others experience a genuine wake-up call. They realize the issue isn't one isolated behavior, it is the sum of everything that repeats itself every week. Friday night's drinks, Saturday restaurant meals, Sunday indulgent breakfast, the automatic glass of wine, the snack in front of a screen. Individually, none of these habits are necessarily dramatic, but together they create a nutritional environment that looks very different from the one the person imagined. Because often they believe everything is right, I don't understand why I have this belly. And because these behaviors has become routine, they stop attracting our attention. What is exceptional is visible. What is repeated becomes invisible because it is a pattern. And what becomes invisible usually stops being questioned. How can we use the cheat meals in order to help? To understand the value of a cheat meal, you first need to understand one thing. Human beings need outlets. Modern life creates stress, pressure, frustration, and a constant mental load. Some people release that pressure through physical activity. The good ways of doing it: running, strength training, boxing, hiking. These are good things. Some other people will find balance through quieter activities: a good book, a good movie night, a TV series, a video game, a vacation. So first process is better, but we all need a bit of the second one in general if we have hectic life. Of course, these escapes should not become a permanent way of avoiding problems. If we spend all our time escaping reality, we sometimes end up avoiding the very issues that really needs to be addressed. But from time to time, everyone needs room to breathe. Nutrition works in a very similar way. A small percentage of people can follow the exact same eating plans every day for months or even years. That's what we call the prisoner mindset, because people in prison, the one that change, often have a strong mindset without any change. They would be able to repeat the same framework for everything in their life. The time where they are cleaning, the time where they are doing their bed, the time where they are sleeping, everything would be under control. It's not bad, but in a way you also lack the social life, the real life experiment. These people really genuinely enjoy that routine. They can do it for months, years, but this is very exceptional in terms of mindset. They enjoy that structure, they enjoy repetition, but for most people, an overly strict diet eventually creates psychological pressure. This pressure is rarely dramatic, it builds slowly. Every craving resisted, every social event declined, every pleasure removed, every frustration accepted. And as it's often the case in life, when pressure becomes too great, something eventually breaks. This is exactly where a cheat meal can become a valuable tool. A cheat meal is not really cheating. It has the name, but that's not really what it means. It's a pressure release valve. It allows pressure to come down before it becomes overwhelming, basically before it boils up and explodes. It also allows you to keep some certain food in your life that you may not want to eat every day on an everyday basis, such as pizza, a burger, a chocolate bar, a favorite dessert, a restaurant meal, a dinner with friends, family gathering. These kind of things can be something you want from time to time, but not on a daily basis. And so the goal is not to lose control, the goal is to maintain control over the long term. Some people, they prefer to concentrate their indulgences into one larger meal during the week. Others prefer several smaller pleasures spread across different days. Both approaches can work. What matters is that these moments remain intentional and reasonable. You don't want to really go beyond. A cheat meal does not mean eating until you're uncomfortable. It does not mean turning an entire day into a binge. It simply means deliberately making room for enjoyment within an overall framework that remains consistent. So you want to have room for your fun. For a highly disciplined individual, one cheat meal per week or two is often enough. For others who are seeking balance rather than maximum optimization, 3 or 4 more flexible meals can perfectly work as well. It all depends on the level of discipline and performance you are aiming for. A good, sustainable strategy will always outperform a perfect strategy that gets abandoned after a few weeks because you can't hold it. Because the systems that are too strict often collapse under their own weight. Now let's talk about how to solve that problem. We need to develop an objective view of your nutrition. When I ask someone how they eat, the answer is often, I pay attention to what I eat, or I eat pretty well. And most of the time, they genuinely believe that. The problem is not that they are trying to deceive others. The problem is that all of us tend to tell ourselves a version of reality that feels a little bit more comfortable than it is in reality. We all do it, myself included, because facing certain truths can be uncomfortable. It took me many years to manage to work on deleting as many of these lies that I'm telling myself, same as other people. And it makes life easier. Admitting that you eat more, by example, than you thought. Admitting that certain habits control you more than you like to admit. Admitting that you are not as disciplined as you imagine. Admitting, by example, that you already know what needs to be changed but haven't changed it yet. Those truths can hurt. And that is exactly why so many people avoid them. They protect themselves. The problem is that when we spend too much time protecting ourselves from reality, we also end up protecting ourselves from solutions. Because we can only fix what we are willing to see. One of the most common statements I hear is, I'm doing everything right, but it's not working. When someone says that, there's usually two possibilities. The first is that their plan generally isn't appropriate for their goal. The second, far more common, is that there are still behaviors flying under the radar. Habits that have become invisible. Automatic behaviors that are no longer questioned. Small deviation that seems harmless when viewed individually, but becomes significant when they accumulate week after weeks or even day after days. And that is where the real work begins, not when you change your diet, not when you start a new program, but when you become willing to honestly examine your current situation. That process can be uncomfortable. Like really uncomfortable. It can even be frustrating, but it's also incredibly liberating because once a problem becomes visible, it can be addressed. As long as it remains hidden, it continues to operate in the background. Throughout my coaching career, I've noticed something interesting. The people who go the furthest are not necessarily the most motivated. They're not always the most talented. They're not always the ones with the most free time. They are usually the ones who are willing to look at reality as it is. They are able to say, I'm doing well in this area, but I could do better in this one. And I know that I need to change it. I need to make that change over there, but I don't yet have the energy to tackle it. That kind of honesty takes courage. Far more courage than simply telling yourself that everything is fine, because it requires letting go of certain excuses, certain justifications, and sometimes certain comforting illusions. But it gives something valuable in return, the ability to move forward. Someone who convinces themselves that they are already doing everything perfectly often end up losing motivation. They don't understand why results aren't coming. They search endlessly for an explanation and they never find one. Eventually, they conclude that their efforts simply don't work. By contrast, a person who is honest with himself understand exactly where they stand. They know what they are doing well. They know what still needs work later on when they have that energy. And more importantly, they know what the next step is, because the next step is what you don't have the energy to fix right now. They don't waste energy wondering why nothing is working. They use that energy to keep moving forward. The truth isn't always pleasant. Most of the time, it's kind of the opposite. But it's almost always more useful than a comfortable illusion, because what holds us back most often is not what we don't know, it's what we refuse to see. Here are some tools to take back the control. Once you understand that the problem is often not a specific food, but rather a collection of invisible habits, a natural questions follow. How do you take back control? The first step is actually surprisingly simple. Observe. Don't judge, just observe. Don't criticize yourself, just observe. Because you cannot fix what you cannot see, and you cannot see what you refuse to look at. This is where many people get stuck. They think they are observing their eating habits, but they're really only paying attention to the moments they're proud of. The healthy meal, the salad, the workout, the good choice at the restaurant. But they forgot everything else, everything that they are not proud of. But the body doesn't forget. It doesn't operate based on selective memories. It operates based on a total sum of our behaviors. That's why keeping a food journal remains one of the most powerful tools available. Whether it's on paper or in an app doesn't matter. What matters is honestly recording what actually happens. Not what you feel about it, but the facts. Another highly effective strategy is to photograph every meal for 1 or 2 weeks. No exceptions. Don't only document the successful meals. Don't hide all the snacks and cheat meals. Don't create a more flattering version of reality. Simply observe. Today, artificial intelligence can also become a remarkably useful tool. You can create a dedicated conversation, explain your age, lifestyle, goals, activity level, and even upload progress pictures if you wish. You create this all in a special dedicated chat. Not to be judged, but to gain an outside perspective. Personally, I often recommend this approach to my clients, even as a coach. Some people believe professionals should always try to sell their own assessment or consultation. I would rather see someone equipped with a tool that they can use on an everyday basis than become dependent on another person for every decision. Of course, AI does not replace a skilled coach or a good nutritionist, but it can be extremely effective at helping people develop a more realistic understanding of their eating habits. A great professional brings something different. They ask the right questions, they identify inconsistency, and sometimes even with your answers, they will see that what you are saying can't be true and they will go beyond and behind. That's sometimes what people need. They help organize meals, they help structure the week. They turn intention into practical actions. They can make pragmatic hints on how to manage some topics better. Unfortunately, not every professional works this way. I've seen many people follow absurd diets, extreme detox plans where the only tips that they were supposed to follow, the only advice was to take a special mushroom that regrow itself in order to help their health, but they were really severely inadequate in terms of protein intakes or macronutrients, which is the way the body is working. So this is not good. The role of a good nutritionist is not to impose an ideology. The role of a good nutritionist is to help someone achieve their goals through the strategy that fits their reality. By example, according to their type of diet, if they eat everything or not. So regardless of the tool you choose, one thing remains irreplaceable: honesty. If the information you provide is incomplete, if you constantly leave out certain behaviors, if you refuse to examine certain habits, then even the best coach, the best nutritionist, or the most advanced AI in the world won't be able to help you properly, because a poor diagnosis always leads to a poor solution. The tool matters, but the quality of the information you provide matters even more. Just a small interruption to remind you that if you want to support our work, you can still click to subscribe on our YouTube channel or even share this video with your friends. Thank you. As a conclusion, I would say that habits can become your greatest allies or your worst enemies. When people think about habits, they usually think about bad habits, but habits themselves are not the problem. The problem is their direction. The best results I've seen throughout my coaching career for last 15 years rarely come from motivation alone, not motivation only. They often come from automation. Someone who has trained 3 times a week for years doesn't wake up every morning and wondering, should I train today or shouldn't I? They simply do it. It has become regular, it has become normal. And that is exactly what makes the habit so powerful. It requires very little mental energy. And the regulation of your mental energy is how you are succeeding in every topic. Unfortunately, bad habits work the same way. The difference is that they work against us instead of for us. The brain is a bit like a highly gifted but extremely lazy genius. It can solve complex problems, learn incredible skills, adapt to almost any situation, but it has one obsession. That obsession is to save energy. That's why it loves habits, and that's why it loves excuses. This brings us to a concept that people rarely discuss. So if there are some psychologists, they would probably give a name. I don't know it. I study it just from observation of life observation, but it probably have a name. In life, certain doors, certain choice remain closed. I call that doors. For many people, stealing is not an option. Cheating on a partner is not an option. Violence is not an option. Breaking a commitment is not an option. These behaviors are not constantly resisted. They simply aren't even considered. The door remains closed. The brain doesn't even look behind it, but sometimes something changes. Something changes the first time that door is opened. The behavior becomes possible. It enters the list of available options. And once an option exists, the brain can find its ways back to it far more easily. The danger is not that the same excuse keeps returning. The danger is worse than that. The brain learns that an excuse is possible. And once it learns that the excuses are available, it becomes remarkably creative at finding new ones. This is exactly what happens with exercise. The first cancelled workout is difficult to justify. The second, a little easier. The third, easier still. And eventually, quitting becomes a normal option. Not because one major decision, but because it's the logical conclusion to all the small decisions taken before. It is like a series of small doors that we already opened and one after each other's, and they make these doors more accessible. Nutrition works in exactly the same way. Bad habits don't destroy your progress overnight. They build themselves layer by layer. The barbecue, then the glass of wine, then the ice cream, then the chips while cooking, then a second glass, then desserts. My point is not to make you hungry, I'm just describing situations. Each layer seems insignificant when viewed on just itself, but the body adds everything together. Some of these layers even create the next one. A large amount of sugar often produces a rapid raise of your blood glucose. Then a drop, and that drop can trigger another craving for sugar shortly afterward. These are the insulin spike. A habit doesn't only create another behavior, it can also create a physiological environment that encourages the next habit. It's kind of a vicious circle. That's how these negative spirals often develop without us realizing it. The good news is that the same mechanism works in reverse. You don't need to change everything at once. Often you simply need to remove one layer, and then another one, and then another one. And above all, have the courage to honestly examine what's really happening. Throughout my career, I noticed that the people who progress the furthest are not always the most disciplined. They are often the most honest with themselves. They are able to say, I'm doing this part well, I could improve in this area, and I know I need to change, but I don't have the energy to tackle it yet. Paradoxically, that person often progresses much faster than someone who insists that they are doing everything right, everything perfectly. Why, you may ask yourself? Because they understand their reality. They know why they are getting certain results. They know why they are not yet getting others. And when their first improvement provide more energy, more confidence, and more stability, they can invest that energy into the next level, and then the next one, and then the next one. That's how lasting transformations are built, level by level, layer by layer, like the onion we told about before. As a coach, this is probably what I wish for you the most. Not motivation, not perfection, but an honest perception of your reality, a perspective objective enough to see what is working, clear enough to recognize what isn't, and compassionate enough to correct problems without condemning yourself for them. Because in most cases, our results are not determined by what we do occasionally. They are determined by what we repeat every week without even noticing. They are determined by what we repeat as an action or behavior every day without even noticing. Conscious pleasure enrich our lives, and unconscious habits often shape our future. Thank you for watching. I hope this video really helped you to realize something about your perception and will help you to reach your goal easier. Remember that you can share the video with your friends if you learned anything, and support us by putting a like or just subscribe to the channel. If you need assistance for your nutrition or for your fitness, have a look in the link under. We have fitness programs and nutrition programs to help you to really make a deep change and something that will help you to live a better life. See you in the next video.